There's a reason Lao Tzu said, "He who conquers others is strong, he who conquers himself is mighty." On the surface, this quote sounds poetic, maybe even wise, but if we stop right there, we miss what it's really pointing to: a terrifying truth about the human condition. We live in a world where people are obsessed with external conquest, status, wealth, followers, power. We glorify the ones who change the world, who build empires, launch rockets, revolutionize industries. But no one seems to ask the deeper question: what's the cost of all that conquest if the self remains unconquered? What if the very person changing the world can't even sit still in a room alone? What if the one leading millions can't lead their own mind away from self-destructive thought patterns? What if the true battle isn't out there but in here? And if that's the case, why do we run from it with such force? Why do we chase external accomplishments instead of turning inward? Because inside, we meet the one opponent we can't outsmart, outspend, or overpower: ourselves. Think about how much easier it is to distract ourselves with ambition than it is to face our inner chaos. You can work 16 hours a day building a company and still never deal with the fact that you're afraid of being alone. You can date dozens of people, maybe even fall in love, and still never confront the childhood wound that makes you feel unworthy of love in the first place. You can be respected, envied, even idolized, and still be a complete stranger to yourself. That's what makes self-mastery so hard. Because it's not about changing the world to match your preferences, it's about changing your relationship to yourself. And that's not glamorous. That's not viral. That's not something you can put on a resume or a TikTok bio, but it's the foundation of everything. Show me a person who rules the world but can't master their anger, and I'll show you a tyrant in disguise. Show me someone who's built an empire but can't sit in silence for 10 minutes without needing to be stimulated, and I'll show you someone who's conquered everything except the one thing that matters.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
So why is it so hard? Why is mastering yourself harder than conquering the world? Because the world gives you metrics. It gives you visible results. You get trophies, money, praise, followers. But the inner world gives you none of that. It gives you silence. It gives you discomfort. It gives you resistance. And because we're addicted to validation, we avoid the path that doesn't come with applause. But what if the applause was never the point? What if the real reward is invisible? What if it's peace, clarity, presence? The ability to stand in the middle of chaos and not be moved? That's what Lao Tzu meant. He wasn't trying to be poetic. He was telling the truth. That the hardest person you will ever face is the one staring back at you in the mirror. Not because you're weak, but because you're layered. You've built so many identities, so many masks, so many coping mechanisms, that to master yourself means peeling all of it back, even the parts you think are you. And that's terrifying. Because most of us don't want to be free, we want to be comfortable. We want to keep our illusions and call them truth. We want to conquer the world without ever confronting the parts of ourselves we've buried. Let me ask you something uncomfortable. What part of yourself are you most afraid of facing? Is it your jealousy? Your laziness? Your need for control? Your tendency to manipulate, to lie, to blame? We all have a shadow. We all carry within us the parts we've disowned. And until we learn to look at those parts without flinching, they will control us from the dark. That's why self-mastery is harder than conquering the world, because it requires you to become brutally honest. It requires you to bring light to places you've kept hidden for years, maybe decades. And that light doesn't always feel good at first. It burns, it exposes, it humbles. But in that humility is your real strength. Not the strength to dominate others, but the strength to transform yourself. Now, let's be clear, self-mastery isn't about perfection. It's not about becoming some emotionless monk floating above the world, untouched by pain. It's the opposite. It's about being fully human, but with awareness. It's about feeling the anger, but not becoming it. Feeling the fear, but not obeying it. Feeling the sadness, but not drowning in it. It's not about control. It's about relationship. Your relationship with your thoughts, your cravings, your impulses, your ego. That's where the real war is. And the battlefield is every moment, every decision, every breath. When someone insults you, do you react or do you respond? When you feel insecure, do you grasp for attention or do you sit with the discomfort and understand it? When your plans fall apart, do you spiral or do you surrender to what is? These are not small questions. These are life-defining questions. And they don't get answered once they get answered every day, again and again, with your choices. That's why this path is so hard. Because it's not linear. It's not one giant leap. It's 1,000 small ones. It's waking up and choosing presence over distraction, choosing truth over comfort, choosing humility over ego. And every time you do, you win not over the world, but over yourself. And that's the only victory that truly matters. The enemy within, why your mind resists the very growth you crave. You'd think that once we understand the importance of mastering ourselves, we'd be eager to start. That we'd wake up every day hungry for growth, discipline, transformation. But that's not what happens, is it? Instead, we procrastinate. We avoid. We distract ourselves with meaningless tasks, scrolling through endless content, numbing out with food, entertainment, or shallow validation. And here's the paradox that most people never confront. The same mind that craves growth is the same mind that resists it. It's a built-in contradiction. You say you want to evolve, to become wiser, stronger, more grounded, but the moment growth knocks on the door, your mind builds a wall. Why? Because growth requires you to let go. And the mind hates letting go. It wants certainty. It wants identity. It wants to protect the version of you that you've always been, even if that version is miserable. This is the enemy within, not your laziness, not your fears, but your attachment to who you think you are, your ego. And the ego isn't evil, it's just scared. It's terrified of its own extinction. And so every time you try to grow, it whispers, "Don't go there." That's dangerous. Stay here. Stay safe. It will give you reasons, excuses, distractions. It will rationalize your stagnation and call it logic. And if you're not conscious of this inner resistance, it will win. It will keep you on the surface of your life, never diving deep, never risking anything real. Because to grow means to die not physically, but psychologically. It means letting go of old beliefs, old stories, old identities. And that feels like death to the ego. But what if that death is the very thing that sets you free? Let me ask you something that most people never dare to confront. What part of your identity are you afraid of losing? Maybe it's the story that you've always been the strong one, the smart one, the independent one. Maybe it's the victim story where everything bad in your life came from someone else's actions. Maybe it's the belief that you need to succeed to be worthy. Whatever it is, your ego is attached to it. And as long as you protect that identity, you will sabotage your growth. You'll keep hitting the same walls, repeating the same patterns, wondering why nothing changes. But the truth is, you haven't changed. You haven't let yourself. And here's where it gets deeper. The mind resists growth not just because it fears change, but because it fears responsibility. Because once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. Once you realize your suffering is often self-created, you can't keep blaming the world. Once you see that your reactions are choices, not reflexes, you have to own them. And that kind of radical self-accountability is rare, because it means giving up the comfort of being a victim. It means admitting, I've been the one standing in my own way. That's not easy. That's not fun. But that's where freedom begins. And this is why self-mastery is a spiritual path. Not in a religious sense, but in the sense that it transforms your inner world. It forces you to confront the parts of you that lie, manipulate, avoid, and overthink. And it teaches you to meet those parts not with judgment, but with awareness. Because you can't master what you hate. You can only master what you understand. So self-mastery isn't about dominating your mind, it's about witnessing it, watching its tricks, seeing its patterns, and slowly, gently, choosing differently. Here's something wild to consider. What if your greatest enemy is not the chaos of the world, but the chaos you carry inside? And what if that enemy doesn't need to be defeated but understood? What if your resistance is actually a teacher? What if every moment you want to quit, avoid, or escape is actually a moment inviting you to go deeper, to grow, to evolve, to let go? That's the power of this path. It's not about becoming someone new. It's about shedding everything you are not. And that process can feel like destruction, but it's sacred. Because what's being destroyed is the illusion. And what's left is the real you. The one who doesn't need approval to feel worthy. The one who doesn't need control to feel safe. The one who doesn't need to conquer the world because they've already conquered themselves. The silent power. How inner mastery shapes the outer world without force. There's a strange irony in life that most people never grasp. The more you try to control the outside world, the more chaotic it feels. But the more you master your inner world, the more the outside begins to move with you. Not because you manipulated it, not because you forced it, but because there's a deep alignment between who you are and what you do. Lao Tzu wasn't just speaking in riddles when he said that mastering yourself is harder than conquering the world. He was revealing a secret that flips the logic of modern life on its head. We think power comes from pushing, from striving, from domination. But real power, the kind that doesn't need to shout, doesn't need to prove, doesn't need to control, comes from within. It's not loud, it's not flashy, it's silent. It's the kind of power that doesn't depend on circumstances but radiates from presence, clarity, and inner stillness. This kind of power can't be bought. It can't be faked. You can't pretend to be grounded when your mind is full of noise. You can't fake peace when your soul is at war with itself. And yet, most people spend their entire lives trying to manufacture authority through external symbols, titles, wealth, appearance, influence, while completely ignoring the one thing that actually creates real influence: inner coherence. When your thoughts, actions, and values are aligned, people feel it. You walk into a room and your energy speaks before you do. You don't need to dominate, because your presence already commands attention not through fear, but through integrity. That's the silent power of inner mastery. It doesn't seek control. It is control not over others, but over yourself. Let me ask you something simple but profound. When was the last time your presence made someone else feel more grounded, just by being you? Not because of what you said, but because of the energy you carried. That kind of impact doesn't come from force. It comes from depth. And depth comes from doing the inner work, facing your fears, dissolving your ego, cultivating stillness. The world is full of noise, but silence, true inner silence, is magnetic. It cuts through the chaos. It creates space in a world addicted to speed. And in that space, people find something they didn't even know they were looking for: truth. Not your truth. The truth. Truth that doesn't need to be argued or defended, it simply is. And here's the most mind-blowing part: when you stop trying to control everything, life starts to flow more effortlessly. Not because you've given up, but because you've stopped resisting what is. You've stopped trying to bend the world to your will and started aligning your will with something deeper. Call it Tao, call it presence, call it the higher self. Whatever name you give it, the experience is the same: peace. And from that peace comes clarity. And from clarity comes action, not reactive, grasping action, but purposeful, efficient, inspired action. The kind that doesn't burn you out, doesn't leave you empty, but fills you with life. Because it's no longer about proving something, it's about expressing what's already true inside you. This is the ultimate paradox. The less you need the world to validate you, the more the world responds to you. Not because you're chasing it, but because you've become something rare, someone who's not enslaved by the external, someone who's free. And freedom is magnetic. It draws people in, not because they want to follow you, but because they want to remember themselves. Where your presence becomes a mirror. It reflects back to others what's possible when you stop living on the surface and start living from the center. That's the power that changes lives. Not through domination, but through demonstration. So the real question is this: are you willing to give up the illusion of control for the reality of alignment? Are you willing to stop chasing the world and start cultivating your inner world so deeply, so consistently that the world can't help but respond? That's not easy. That's not fast. But it's real. And in a world addicted to the fake, the fast, and the shallow, real is the most powerful thing you can be. And maybe, just maybe, that's what conquering yourself was always about: not becoming perfect, but becoming whole. Not proving your power, but embodying it. Not controlling the world, but influencing it through the quiet, unshakable strength of someone who has nothing to prove and everything to give.